Hi everyone. You have joined us this evening for a fantastic webinar. We're just going to give it another minute or so to let some more folks join us. All right, well, I see that it is 6:30 Mountain Time. My name is Dolly Edmonds, and welcome everybody. We're so excited to have such a good turnout for tonight's webinar. As I noted, I am Dolly Edmonds. I'm the Director of Policy and Outreach at Audubon Rockies, which is a regional office of National Audubon Society. The Audubon Rockies office serves members and chapters in states of Utah, Wyoming, and Colorado. I'd like to introduce you to my colleague tonight, Max Malmquist.
Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here. I'm Max Malmquist. I'm the Outreach Associate for Audubon Saline Lakes Program based in Salt Lake City. And I'll be helping Dolly tag team the Q&A session towards the end. So I'll see you after the presentation.
Wonderful. All right, so everyone should see the screen now. It's a welcome screen to the virtual birding tour of Greater Zion. For a little bit of housekeeping before we jump into the presentation. This presentation is being recorded, and we have all participants' audio is muted to avoid background noise, but we really do want to encourage questions. And so if you look at the bottom of your box, at bottom of your screen, there is a chat box. If you don't see it, you hover your mouse over it and the chat box should pop up. Feel free to go ahead and type your questions in there. And as Max had indicated earlier, we're going to go ahead and collect those and answer them at the end of the presentation. I have noticed that people have already started entering stuff into the chat box. That's wonderful. We're also going to be doing some trivia questions sprinkled throughout the presentation in a poll format. When you see slides that have a star in the bottom left hand of your screen, you'll know at the end of that slide, there's going to be a little trivia question going to pop up on your screen and should be fairly self-explanatory. We'll give about 15 to 20 seconds to answer each question, but just some fun questions. So I don't want to delay us anymore on taking this bird tour through beautiful Greater Zion. I'd like to pass this on now to Paul Jaussi. Paul?
Well, thank you, Dolly. As she mentioned, I am the president of the Red Cliffs Audubon here in Southwest Utah. And full disclosure, I am not the president of the Audubon chapter here because I am the most knowledgeable person on birds in the area. There's much more knowledgeable people. But I do think I am president because not many more people have the passion for birds that I do, and a passion for this area of the country, this beautiful part of the country. And what I want to do is be able to share that passion with you today. And Dolly is going to bring up our first poll question right now.
All right, everyone. So the very first poll question should be showing up on your screen. The first is, what state do you currently live in? Go ahead and pick one answer there. And there's a question below that that says, have you ever been to southwestern Utah before? We're going to give this another about 6 seconds or so. All right, we're gonna wrap it up here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Wow, all right, everybody. We have a majority of folks coming from California. Next, we have Colorado and a really great showing from Arizona and Utah, and quite a few other folks actually from none of the previously identified states. And then we have a question, have you been to southwestern Utah before? A majority have been there, but we have some brand new folks today. Well, thanks for taking part in our poll, and we'll pass it back to you, Paul.
All right, well, thank you. As we go through this this tour, I just want to highlight some of the things what we're gonna learn. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Red Cliffs Audubon chapter, and then describe what do we mean when we say Greater Zion. What is that area referring to? I want to really highlight why is Greater Zion so great for birding, and then we're going to take that tour and just show you some of the amazing birding habitat here in Greater Zion. And finally, I just want to, we'll show you some ways, the best ways that you can come here and bird in Greater Zion. And as Dolly mentioned, please feel free to post questions in the chat box. I really want this to be both a fun and an informative time together. So first, about the Red Cliffs Audubon. We are an independent affiliate of the National Audubon Society. We have about 200 active members and hundreds more friends in our region. Our mission is to inspire people to enjoy and protect the variety of birds and their habitats in our region. So when we talk about our region, this is roughly our chapter area. It's about 7 counties in the southwest corner of Utah. There are also 3 other traditional Audubon chapters in northern Utah and 1 campus chapter at BYU. The Red Cliffs chapter of the Audubon we cover roughly 21,000 square miles in these 7 counties. And what's interesting, that's just under the size of West Virginia. So that's our chapter boundaries. And within that 21,000 square miles, we have a population of only about 250,000 people. So it's a very sparsely populated area. Tonight, we're going to be focusing on just a specific county, Washington County, Utah, in the very far southwest corner of the state. There are 31 different states that have a Washington County. And so to differentiate ourselves from all the other Washington counties in the country, we call ourselves Greater Zion. And that's our logo right there. Now, if you were to go and do some research on Greater Zion, go to the Tourism Bureau, of course, you're going to see images of beautiful hiking. You know, our namesake is Zion National Park, but you're also going to see a lot of images like this, lots of recreation, mountain biking, climbing, golfing, sand dunes. You're also going to see a lot of sport events. Every weekend, there's different sport tournaments. Our city fills up with people coming from all over for sport tournaments. The one thing, though, that you won't find are images like this. Birding just isn't something Greater Zion is known for, or really hasn't been promoted. And that is something we are trying to change. And I learned this personally through my experience in my birding journey. I've been birding for about over 20 years. I started out in Washington County, Oregon. This picture here it's a quarter mile from my home. It's Washington County, Oregon is west of Portland. At its nearest point, it's 25 miles from the Pacific Ocean. I birded here for over 20 years in places like the Fernhill Wetlands, the Jackson Bottom Wetlands, and the Tualatin River National Wildlife Refuge. And in those 22 years, I counted 172 species in Washington County, Oregon. 3 years ago, for work, my family moved to Washington County, Utah. And this is, you know, Greater Zion. This is what I was coming to. And in my mind, I'm thinking, boy, if I see 50 birds, I'll be lucky. Or I'm going to the desert. And so after 1 year, though, I looked at my bird list and I had 181 species. After 3 years now in the county, it says 224, but I'm happy to announce that as of this morning, it's now 225 species. I saw a red-eyed vireo at Tonnequint Park dropping off my daughters this morning. So it's just amazing the bird habitat that we have here. In fact, in this county of Greater Zion, over 400 species of birds have been seen. And I think I've seen 50 more species in my 3 years in the desert than I saw in over 20 years of birding in the lush green of the Pacific Northwest, I started asking myself, the question, how is that possible? What makes this place such an amazing bird habitat? And my simple research found three major reasons why this county records more species than any other county in the state of Utah. I'm just going to go through those three reasons real quick right now. Well, there's the question I just asked myself: what makes birding in Greater Zion so great? So the first reason is simple geology. I'm going to show this map here of the geologic regions of the Western United States. And our county is circled there, down there in Southwest Utah. And as you can see, it's the convergence of three major geologic regions. We've got the Colorado Plateau to the east, the Great Basin to the northwest, and then we have the Mojave Desert down in the south part of our county. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and you can see these gray areas in Utah are typically the mountains. Well, we've got this little pocket right in the middle of our county. And that unnamed section of gray is a part of the Rocky Mountains, but it's a little different than the rest of the mountains in Utah. That's the Pine Valley Mountains. And this mountain range looms large over the entire county. And it's really a self-contained mini mountain range about 15 miles long. And it's different than the other mountain ranges in Utah because it is actually what's called a laccolith. And it's the result of volcanic activity where the magma presses from below and basically lifts the earth up, forming this large mound or dome. And Pine Valley Mountains is likely the largest laccolith in the world. It isn't the Great Basin, it's not the Colorado Plateau or the Mojave Desert, it's its own geologic feature. So technically, Greater Zion is the convergence of four geologic regions. And here's a satellite view of Greater Zion. And you can really see this geologic variation. It looks rough and rugged. There are very few flat, level places in the county. And you can also visually see the different geologic regions. The lighter brown area down in the south is the Mojave Desert. Up in the northwest, you can see is the Great Basin. Over to our east, we have the Colorado Plateau. And then right in the middle is the Pine Valley Mountains. So geologic variation is the first reason. Second reason is it's kind of related. It's simple topography. Again, this map shows a lot of variation in elevation. And I just want to point out first, kind of give you a size reference. We're about 65 miles wide by 40 miles. We're about half the size of the state of Connecticut, just this county. So as far as elevation, we start down in the south, very far southwest corner. It's the lowest point in the state of Utah at 2,180 feet. As we move into the metro area of St. George, I use that term loosely for you from California and other states. St. George is the main city. It sits at 2,700 feet. If we go over to the eastern side, right at the base of Zion National Park, we've got Springdale, which is, again, the entrance to Zion National Park is at 3,900 feet. Up in the top corner of the Great Basin, the town of Enterprise is 5,300 feet. We have a community of Pine Valley at 6,800 feet. And then at the top of the Colorado Plateau here, we have over 8,000 feet. And I highlight those areas because all of these locations you can easily drive to. Very accessible, paved roads, and easily accessible in a single day. And then, of course, Pine Valley Mountains, it summits out at over 10,000 feet. So we have 8,000 feet of elevation change in our county. And the third reason is simply climate. And it makes sense. We have all these geologic regions and different elevations. We're going to have different climates. And again, you can see that this is the climate map of the Western United States. Right here in the southwest corner, again, we have 5 different distinct climate zones in our county. Now, I'm an engineer. by training, by profession. Everything I try to boil down to math and numbers. And so I developed this equation, and it's simply geologic convergence plus varied topography plus multiple climate zones equals amazing and diverse bird habitat. I want to add one more element here. Migration, of course, this isn't unique to our area, but we are part of the Pacific Flyway. You can see us right there, right on the edge. But note that we are right on the border with the Central Flyway also. So we get a lot of lost birds from both flyways. So with that background, let's take I just want to take you on a tour of what I think is the most beautiful place in the world, and that's Greater Zion. And we're actually going to start down in the southwest corner of the Mojave Desert. And I'm going to show you a map here. We're going to start at the Beaver Dam slope, so you get a reference of where we're at. This is beautiful traditional Mojave Desert. You got the creosote bush, you've got the Joshua tree. It's the flat, wide open spaces. And as you drive these roads, and most of these roads they're gravel roads. They're not paved. They're gravel roads. You're gonna find just amazing birds. A cactus wren, which is the largest wren. The black-throated sparrow, which really is such a beautiful, beautiful bird. The Scott's oriole. The loggerhead shrike. And as you continue along, you think you're driving for miles and miles in the Mojave Desert. We're going to come to eventually to a place called the Lytle Ranch Preserve. This is an interesting location because as you're driving through, you're going to come across this beautiful, lush, almost Garden of Eden type location. This is the northernmost point of the Mojave Desert, just sticking like a thumb up into the Great Basin. It's also designated by the Audubon as an important birding area. And the Audubon has recognized hundreds of these areas across the Western Hemisphere. And they work with over a dozen international partners in protecting these areas as critical bird habitat. Over 275 bird species have been identified at Lytle Ranch Preserve. So if you're going to find a rare bird in the state of Utah, it's a good chance you're going to find it at Lytle Ranch. It's one of the very few washes in the Mojave Desert that has year-round running water. I'm from the Pacific Northwest, and when I see that, my roof drains that much water in a rainstorm. It doesn't look like much, but for the Mojave Desert, that running water right there, that's life. Again, here's the view. You can see it's about 3 or 4 miles long, this preserve. Some of the birds we're going to find are the phainopepla, the black-tailed gnatcatcher. This is one of the few places in the state of Utah where you can actually find this bird. The beautiful summer tanager, the ash-throated flycatcher, and then its cousin, the brown-crested flycatcher. I like to say when you're at Lytle Ranch, you look up to see the brown-crested, you look down to see the ash-throated flycatcher. And of course, we have owls. Just personally, last month we were at Lytle Ranch, and we saw 9 long-eared owls at one location. And in Greater Zion, we have actually 10 species of owls that we can see easily in our county. And with that, Dolly, I'm going to turn it over to you for another poll question.
Great, everyone. All right, so we have our next poll. On your screens, you have the following question. Owls have special fringed feathers at the tips of their wings called flutings. What is the purpose of these feathers? All right, we have about half of our participants have answered this. And we'll give it just a couple more seconds. All right. Well, sounds are made by things moving through the air, and that is usually caused by turbulence. Owl flutings break up the air, causing turbulence to only occur in very small and dispersed amounts, known as microturbulence, thus making their flight nearly silent. Owls are capable of flying just inches from their prey without being detected. So congratulations.
All right, thank you. Again, great place. Ladder Ranch is a great place to find owls. As I mentioned, year-round running water here in the Mojave Desert. If I was to show this picture to people and said, this is Costa Rica, I don't think anybody would question it, but this is actually the Mojave Desert with that water. And just a fun little bird. Last year, this bird was seen here, the little blue heron. And what's unique about that is I'm bringing up the range map, and you can see where typically you'd find that bird. It came a long ways to come visit us in Greater Zion. Even the birds want to come to Greater Zion. So we're going to continue our tour here, and we're going to kind of go up now more into the central part or of our county around the metro area and show some of our habitat in the Red Cliffs area. And our first stop is going to be Snow Canyon State Park. And while it's much smaller than Zion National Park, this state park really can rival it in beauty and scenery. And it's often said that if this canyon was in any other state, it would probably be a national park. And what's amazing, it's only about 20 minutes from downtown St. George, so it's easily accessible. It's a short canyon, it's about 4 miles long, but it provides a great variety of habitat and geology. The base of the canyon, you go down to lower elevations, it's in the Mojave Desert. And then you can travel along those 4 miles and come up in elevation, and you end up at the start of the Great Basin along the foothills of the Pine Valley Mountains. In fact, this canyon has several lava tubes from the volcanic activity of the Pine Valley Mountains. Some of the birds you're going to see is the black-chinned sparrow, beautiful green-tailed towhee. We have the woodhouse's scrub jay, not to be confused now with the California scrub jay, which was split. And we also have the canyon wren. Beautiful. This is an iconic bird in our region. They inhabit the canyons. I'm just going to try playing this real quick. That is a beautiful sound that we hear all over in our area as you walk around in the canyons, that call of the canyon wren. We get the rufous crowned sparrow and the white-throated swift. The park actually closes a side canyon during the summer months to allow the white-throated swifts to nest undisturbed. And continue on in the Red Cliffs area, where I'm actually going to introduce you to the Red Cliffs Desert Reserve. And you can see all along the transition area of the Mojave Desert and the other regions, you see that band of red. That's our Red Cliff area. And a big portion of that is the Red Cliffs Desert Reserve. This reserve was created in the mid-90s as a compromise for development of the county. This is an incredibly fast-growing county. In fact, it's one of the top fastest-growing cities in America. The county agreed to set aside and protect this area in exchange for opening up other areas of the county for development. And this area is currently managed by various agencies, including the Bureau of Land Management and our county. And it really is a beautiful transition area. You can see, as you drive around the county, you can see views like this of the red cliffs superimposed against the Pine Valley Mountains. One of the main purposes of this reserve is to protect the endangered desert tortoise. It also protects all wildlife, including the Gila monster, the Mojave Desert sidewinder. We have the California king snake. This is just a small sampling of the reptiles. And typically, snakes aren't usually things you use to entice visitors to come to your area. But I found that any native species is an indicator of a healthy habitat. And these reptiles, just like our birds, are indicators of a healthy Greater Zion. We're going to continue on in our tour and actually stop right in town, right here in St. George. This is our largest city. It's the county seat. and it's located only about 5 to 10 miles north of the Arizona border. One of the things that our cities do well is creating parks and walking and biking paths along the various rivers that come through the area. And these parks provide quick and easy birding opportunities. I like to go out in the mornings when it's cool, or go out at lunchtime. And some of the common birds you're going to find in these parks and along our paths, are the greater roadrunner, the verdin. The ladder-backed woodpecker is our most common woodpecker down here in the Mojave Desert area. You get the black-chinned hummingbird, Aber's towhee. You get the beautiful orioles like the Bullock's oriole and the hooded oriole. And every morning, the Say's phoebe, in all the neighborhoods are calling. They wake you up. It's a beautiful call. Also the Gambel's quail. And one of our more beautiful birds that we have in our parks here is a vermilion flycatcher, stunning red. Most guides books show that this bird would be a rare summer visitor to our area. But we do have these beautiful flycatchers year-round in several of our parks. And with water being our most precious resource in Greater Zion, our rivers, our rivers and streams, they widely fluctuate with low and high flows, which create these beautiful canyons and valleys. And as you can imagine, anywhere where a river cuts through these mountains and plateaus will be some amazing riparian habitat. And to highlight these riparian areas, I'm just going to showcase one of them called the Lavercan Confluence Park. This park is where both the Ash Creek and Lavercan Creek meet up with the Virgin River. And it's absolutely amazing, surrounded by cliffs. And some of the birds you're going to find in this kind of habitat. We have the Chrysal thrasher, the Bell's vireo, Lazuli bunting. And a favorite for me is the common blackhawk. And you'll find these nesting near streams, and they hunt by perching above the water for its prey. And we have about a half dozen known nesting sites in Greater Zion. And again, you can never overlook hummingbirds. They're beautiful. The Costa's hummingbird. And I know, Dolly, you've got a question for us here about hummingbirds.
Yes, all right. So on your screens now, you should have two questions. The first is, hummingbirds are highly unique birds. Which of the following abilities do only hummingbirds have? Hovering while flying, flying at speeds over 30 miles per hour, flying backwards, or they don't need to migrate. And the second question is, for their size, hummingbirds have the largest what of all birds? All right, we're just going to give it another 5 seconds. All right, so hummingbirds have extremely high metabolism, breathing rates, and heart rates, in addition to being the only bird able to fly backwards. Congratulations. And the second question, a hummingbird's brain makes up a whopping 4.2% of its weight. Proportionally, that's the largest of any birds. Studies have shown that they can remember every flower they've ever visited, migration routes, and even recognize the humans that fill their feeders.
Awesome, thank you. Hummingbirds are amazing. It causes is a beautiful with that purple gorget. We're going to go to another geologic region of our county now, the Great Basin. And yeah, this picture right here is taken in the same county. We're going to showcase this by going to the town of Enterprise. And this is mainly an agricultural area. And as such, it's where we go when we want to see raptors. This is true Great Basin habitat with junipers, sagebrush. The elevation is around 5,000 to 6,000 feet down in the valleys. And so unlike the lower elevation of the Mojave Desert and around St. George, this area can get really cold in the winter and can get lots of snow. Some of our year-round residents are the golden eagle. We have the prairie falcon, the burrowing owl, although their habitat, like everywhere, is getting more and more threatened with development. In the summer, we get the Swainson's hawk. And in the fall, when these raptors leave for their winning grounds in Argentina, they are replaced in the food chain by the rough-legged hawk that comes in the winter. We have the ferruginous hawk, which is our largest hawk here. And of course, the bald eagle. We get them mainly in the winter. I say mainly because, you know, while not officially agreed upon, we have at least one nesting pair in the county during the summer in one of the high elevation locations. So beautiful bird. Dolly, you have a question about the bald eagle?
Yes, all right. We have one question for the bald eagle. Who was opposed to the bald eagle being our country's emblem, stating, "I wish that the bald eagle had not been chosen as a representative of our country. He is a bird of bad moral character. He does not get his living honestly. Too lazy to fish for himself." And we'll give it just a few more seconds. All right. So the bald eagle was chosen in 1782 as our emblem. Ben Franklin wanted the wild turkey as it was a bird of courage who, quote, would not hesitate to attack a grenadier of the British Guards who would presume to invade his farmyard with a red coat on.
Oh, well, I can, hard to imagine the turkey being on our $1 bill there. We're going to go to our third geologic region, the Pine Valley Mountains. And as I mentioned before, this region is a result of volcanic activity that rise to an elevation of over 10,000 feet. And these mountains are really one of the more prominent features in Greater Zion. Because of the central location of the Pine Valley Mountains, it touches the other three geologic regions of the county. We got the Great Basin to the west, the Colorado Plateau to the east, and the Mojave Desert to the south. Something unique about this mountain is that it has the highest concentration of plant species of any mountain range in Utah, with over 1,000 species identified. So, and one of the best places for birding around these mountains is at a high mountain valley called Pine Valley. And it's on the eastern side of Pine Valley Mountains. And there's a small community called Pine Valley, which sits at 6,500 feet of elevation and has year-round accessibility. And this high mountain valley has recorded over 160 species of birds. It's amazing about it. It's a short 45-minute drive from downtown St. George. So it's a quick escape from birding in the heat of the Mojave Desert. And so, as you can see, this is the region that borders the Great Basin. You can kind of see that habitat there. Again, it's one of the areas you come in Greater Zion to look for high elevation birds. And I always, when I go up there, I have a hard time believing I'm in the same county as St. George. Some of the birds we're going to find here and in other high elevation areas of our county are the western wood pewee, the broad-tailed hummingbird, the western tanager, which is my gateway bird. The first time I got interested in birding was when a friend loaned me a pair of binoculars and had me look at a western tanager. And I couldn't believe birds were so colorful. We have the Lewis's woodpecker, the black-throated gray warbler, the Plumbeus vireo, the Steller's jay, all beautiful high elevation birds. I'm now going to go into the final geologic region and probably our most famous and iconic region, that's the Colorado Plateau. I'm going to start us by taking us a drive up a road called Kolob Terrace Road. This is a fantastic birding road and perhaps my favorite place to bird in the entire county because of the variety of habitat you can see in about 20 miles of driving. Kolob Terrace is the plateau that makes the top of Zion National Park and sits at 8,000 feet. But to get there, you start down in the bottom in the Mojave, in this desert lowland and these riparian habitats. So these photos I took one day as we were driving up the road. After about 5 miles, you start entering juniper trees and start hitting the Red Cliffs. Soon you'll be up into some of the higher mountain valleys with incredible views of the west side of Zion National Park. And near the top of the plateau, you'll transition to grassy meadows, pine and quaking aspen. And then finally end up at over 8,000 feet with pine trees and looking down into Zion National Park. And as you travel this road up to the top, you're gonna find a variety of species like the Cassin's kingbird, the lark sparrow, juniper titmouse, western bluebird, with the brewer sparrow. As we get up higher into the pines and we'll get into the Virginia's warblers and the Grace's warbler. We have all three western nuthatches, the white-breasted, the red-breasted, and the pygmy nuthatch. And a couple of my favorites, you can never get tired of seeing a mountain chickadee. They just seem so curious. And for beauty, nothing really can surpass the mountain bluebird. In my opinion, one of the greatest views in nature is seeing one of these birds in the evening light as they perch in the high elevation fields and meadows. Absolutely beautiful. And finally, our last stop on our tour of Greater Zion is our namesake, Zion National Park. And it's located, as you see, along the eastern border of the county. You can see from the satellite image just the steep and rugged canyons. Zion National Park is also designated by the Audubon as a globally important bird area based on use of the area by bird species that are on the sensitive species list. In this globally important designation, it's designated this because of a diversity of environments compressed into a relatively small space. And this varied habitat attracts approximately 290 different species to the park. Really is a diversity of environments. The breeding Mexican spotted owls are the primary reason Zion National Park is a globally important birding area. They did a survey in 2007. They found 18 occupied territories were found, 14 of which were occupied by pairs. These owls are found in the steep canyons within the park. This image here that I'm pulling up here on the left is a great example of their habitat. You can see this canyon is a steep canyon, about 100 feet wide, and the owls love to just sit in these deep canyons. Another sensitive species nesting in Zion National Park is the peregrine falcon. The peregrine falcon is listed as a species of greatest conservation need in the Utah Comprehensive Wildlife Conservation Strategy. And an interesting note about Zion National Park is that rock climbers come from around the world to climb its big walls that rise thousands of feet above the canyon floor. And as you can imagine, rock climbers and peregrine falcon nests do not work well together. So in a partnership that benefits everyone, climbers now volunteer each spring and summer to search for and monitor nesting sites. They ensure that any climbing route that contains an active nest is closed for climbing. This image is actually one of the volunteers from the climbing community monitoring peregrine falcon nesting sites. And you see here, we have the red star. So Dolly, we have a poll question.
We do. All right. So we have, let's see. Sorry, there's a little bit of a technical glitch. All right, so the peregrine falcon is the fastest animal on Earth. When not hunting, this bird generally flies between 40 and 60 miles per hour. However, when diving to catch its prey, the peregrine falcon can reach speeds up to how many miles per hour? Choices range 90, 120, 180, 220. All right, we'll give it a few more seconds. Peregrine falcons are formidable hunters that prey on birds and bats in mid-flight. Peregrine falcons hunt from above and after sighting their prey, drop into a steep, swift dive that can top 220 miles per hour.
It's a fast bird. Thank you, Dolly. And one of the more famous sensitive species in the park is the California condor, which are now found here almost year-round. In 2007, there were 42 California condors roosting just outside the park boundary, and then most of which come into the park as they're soaring and hunting. It's a beautiful, beautiful bird. So fun to see. I'm going to put up a quote that's found on the National Audubon website regarding the California condor and Zion National Park. Evidence of nesting has not yet been documented, but there's a good likelihood that nesting could happen in the future. Well, it's time we update the website because that quote is out of date. This photo right here was taken by my friend who was sitting on the top of a very popular hiking trail when this young condor chick flew in within about 10 feet of him. This is the first successful condor chick fledged in Zion National Park, they believe in over 100 years. And this chick is also the 1,000th bird tracked since 1982 and has been given the name 1K. And another question for Dolly.
Yes, okay, so this is our very last question. What bird has the largest wingspan of any existing species? And we've talked about two of those in this presentation tonight. Golden eagles, wandering albatross, California condor, or blue heron. All right, I'm going to go ahead and give you a few more seconds. With wingspans reaching nearly 12 feet, the wandering albatross has the largest wingspan of any living bird species. I tricked you guys. The blue heron ranges between 5.5 to 6.5 feet. Golden eagles are 6 to 7 feet. And our California condor is just a measly 10 feet.
They are incredible to see. I was in Zion a couple times in the last month, and to see these birds soaring, it's absolutely beautiful. A trip to Greater Zion is not complete without a visit to Zion National Park. But one dimension of the park, and really all of the Greater Zion, that people miss is the extreme diversity of birds that can be found here. The Red Cliffs Audubon is trying to promote that extreme diversity and let people know that this area is really one of the best in the country for birding. So the question is, what's the best way to go birding in all these places? Every last week of April, the Red Cliffs Audubon hosts the Red Cliffs Bird Fest at Greater Zion. And we've, just so you can get a variety of this entire area, the variety of habitats, here's an example of some of the tours that we have. We have the Beaver Dam Slope and Lido Ranch. We'll be able to go into Snow Canyon State Park with a naturalist. This is a picture of the Tucupetsi Trail. It's a great riparian habitat that goes through the Santa Clara River Gorge. What's amazing about this area, it has one of the highest concentration of Anasazi petroglyphs anywhere. So as you go along birding, you can look up and find the petroglyphs. We have several large reservoirs in the county that host a surprisingly large number of shorebirds and waterfowl. We have grebes, ducks, geese, and shorebirds by the thousands. And we even get common loon and Pacific loon fairly regularly. In fact, one of the first species I recorded in the county after moving here was a white-winged scoter, which I found out on the Pacific coast. One of the best ways to get up close with these birds is on a kayak. And as part of the Red Cliffs Bird Fest at Greater Zion, we have a birds and boats tour where experienced guides will take kayakers out to see these waterfowl. Birds and reptiles. If we're out birding in the desert, why not join up with an experienced herpetologist that can highlight the different reptiles? Another neat feature of our county is just south of us is an area called the Arizona Strip. It's about 200 miles wide, 80 miles deep, borders the Grand Canyon. And there are no paved roads in that entire area, and it's recognized as an international dark sky location. So in addition to owling tours, you can have the opportunity to join our local astronomy club to go out for dark sky tours. We have the tours, the condors of the Vermilion Cliffs. And the Vermilion Cliffs is home of the Condor Recovery Program run by the Peregrine Fund. This organization is also a sponsor of the Red Cliffs Bird Fest and hosts a tour out to the Vermilion Cliffs to view the condors and to learn directly from biologists with the Peregrine Fund. A fun little tour we do also is the Big Day, attempt to see as many species as possible in Greater Zion. This is an example of the route we could take. You'd start out in the morning at sunrise, before sunrise at Lytle Ranch, and work your way back up through the Mojave Desert, through Confluence Park, some riparian areas, and then end up all the way at the end of the day up at the Kolob Terrace. We like many events in this spring, the Bird Fest was canceled, so myself and my father-in-law did the Big Day that same weekend, and we actually got 114 species of birds in one day in the county. And of course, there'll be tours inside Zion National Park, both for birding and a naturalist tour. There's really something for everyone. And it's really not a comprehensive list of all the available tours, but it gives you an idea of some of the great opportunities to explore Greater Zion. And even if you can't make it to the Red Cliffs Bird Fest, we invite you to come to Greater Zion and see this amazing place for yourself. There are few places in the country where you get such a diversity of geology, topography, and climate in such a small area. It's a place where you can be birding in the lowlands of the Mojave Desert at dawn, have your lunch among red cliffs as you transition into the Great Basin, and then watch the sunset go down over Zion National Park on top of the Colorado Plateau. And as we like to brag around here, it's one of the few places where the beauty of the birds is matched only by the beauty of the landscape. And with that, I'd like to end my presentation with just a good birding. Thank you.
Well, my goodness, you just gave us a whirlwind tour, and I've been keeping eyeball on the chat box, and there are a ton of questions coming in. I'm going to go ahead and start off with the first question, Paul, and that is, I haven't been to southwestern Utah. What is the best way to get there via plane and car?
Good question. We are actually about an hour and 45 minutes north of Las Vegas. So if you're going to fly, that's the closest international airport. St. George does have a regional airport. It flies from Denver, Phoenix, Los Angeles, Salt Lake. If you're driving, you're coming from California, I noticed the majority of the attendees were from California. If it's Southern California, you would come across or come up I-15. If you're in the Bay Area, you'd come across to I-80 and then down I-15. Coming from the east, I-70 and then down I-15, and then south, if you go through New Mexico. It's really, that's probably the way you'd want to come because it's beautiful. You'd come through Grand Canyon area, Lake Powell, Kanab, some beautiful areas.
Thanks, Paul. A few questions about this. What's the weather like down there? And what's the best time of year to go birding?
Well, that's a tough question today. It was 105 degrees here today. Summer's hot, but as I showed you, there is high elevation birding. And the nice thing about St. George, compared to other desert cities like Las Vegas or Phoenix, is that it does cool down in the evening. It gets down to the upper 60s, low 70s. And so when you get up early in the morning, you can go do birding in the lower elevations. Spring is, like many places, migration is incredible. The weather in the springtime, the week of the festival this year that was canceled, was in the 70s and 80s. So yeah, winter, we do have really good birding in the winter. In fact, the bird festival used to be held in the winter. And so we get a lot of the birds that come from the north that winter down here. So you can bird all year long. The summer months are hot. You just get up and bird early in the morning and then go to the higher elevations in the afternoon and evening.
And I will make note before asking the next question. At the bottom of your screen is the not only the website for the Red Cliffs Audubon chapter, but also for the Red Cliffs Bird Festival. And if you go to that website, you can sign up to get announcements and give you a heads up. I believe you have registration starting in February for next year.
Yes.
So hopefully we are past COVID-19, but it's also a great way for the chapter to stay in touch with you to let you know how things are progressing. So the question for you, Paul, is being asked by Janet. What are the best places and times to see California condors in the county?
Good question. You know, this year was unique in that we had a nesting pair right inside Zion National Park. So there was about 3 or 4 months where they had volunteers set up at a stop inside the canyon where you could get off the shuttle and look through scopes at the condors. The best time is the summer months as they come up north. I believe a friend of mine texted me and they found 12 roosting condors up at Lava Point, which is the Kolob Terrace. So summer months, you have a really good chance to go inside the park and just look up, or you go up to Kolob Terrace and just scan the skies. You'll see turkey vultures. As you're scanning, just make sure the turkey vultures aren't zone-tailed hawks, condor, or golden eagles. But yeah, I'd say the Kolob Terrace region of the park is probably your best, or inside the Zion Canyon itself.
Thanks, Paul. This next question is probably more for Dolly. Lots of people are wondering, is this presentation being recorded and how can they access it?
So I've heard that, yes, we are recording it, and I've heard that actually we hit our capacity, which is pretty amazing. So there's a lot of interest in this. We are recording it, and Audubon Rockies will be working with the Red Cliffs Audubon chapter, and we will be having the presentation posted online, and we will be following up with all the registrants with that link.
Great.
So my question now is from Pam. Paul, she asks, how does geology influence the number of bird species?
Geology is the way to think about it is Mojave Desert. There's habitat, plants, animals that are specific to geologic regions. So, and a lot of it is elevation, it's interrelated, but so if you're in the Mojave Desert, you're going to have a certain number of, or certain variety of plant species. In the Great Basin, you have a completely different type of plant species, even probably down to the insects and the flies and the bugs. Go to the Colorado Plateau, you'll have a completely different. So many birds are specific to a geologic region. For the Mojave Desert, for example, as you see, our logo is the Roadrunner. You don't find the Roadrunner in the Great Basin or the Colorado Plateau. You find it in the Mojave Desert. Hope that answered the question, Pam.
Thanks, Paul. Not surprisingly, lots of questions about Lytle Ranch. Who manages Lytle Ranch Preserve? How do we visit, and is it open to the public?
Yes, Lytle Ranch Preserve, it is open to the public. It's managed, owned by Brigham Young University. It was actually purchased by the Nature Conservancy, is it mid-'80s, I believe, and then they transferred ownership over to Brigham Young University with an easement, and Brigham Young University operates it as a field research station. It is open to the public. You can go online, just Google or search Lytle Ranch Preserve. They do ask you to fill out a waiver, and I don't know if there's a phone number there still. They used to just ask you to phone the caretaker there, just to let them know that you're there birding. But yeah, it's open to the public.
Great. So we've had a lot, as I'm monitoring the chat box, a ton of compliments on your photographs that are being presented here. And so the question is coming from quite a few folks. Are these all of your own photographs, Paul?
No. If you notice in the photographs, I put the credits down below. A lot of them, most of them, or the highest number of them, were from a gentleman in our county named Rick Friedel, and incredible birder, incredible photographer, and he has generously opened up his library, his photo library, for use with the Audubon, that if we use it for non-commercial purposes. And so there was a few there that were mine, a few that were friends of mine that I was with them when we took the pictures. Others were from the Audubon digital access management system. I wish I could take those photos. My father, I'm fortunate in that I have a father-in-law who loves birding, and he's a photographer too. And we always joke when we go, do we take the camera or do we want to see good birds? Because we know we don't get both. So.
All right, Paul, your next question is from Geraldine. Would we be able to receive bird lists for the areas mentioned, or where could people find some bird lists?
That's a good question. We have them, Washington County bird list, actually compiled by Rick Friedel, the photographer I was just talking about. I believe we have that posted on the Red Cliffs Audubon website. And if it's not there, we'll make sure we get that posted. In fact, we'll post that on the redcliffsbirdfest.com website too. So excellent question. We should post that. Thank you. Good question.
Okay, we have Sheila, who's actually planning on visiting in the fall. Can we expect to see birds in the fall? You sort of mentioned this earlier. And where would you recommend visiting during the fall?
Yeah, depends on the timing. We get some great birds in the fall coming through the reservoirs, the migrating birds. Fall, it's cooling down, going up to the higher elevations. The Pine Valley would be fun for the higher elevation. Kolob Terrace, as the leaves change colors. But really, it's migration is happening, and you can find birds. Again, Lytle Ranch is always good. There's a great park in downtown St. George, near downtown St. George, called Tonnequint. And that's actually where I saw the red cliff or the red-eyed vireo this morning. But always great birds there. Lytle Ranch is always good. And let me just recommend the Laverkin Confluence Park. Great place for riparian birds too.
Thanks, Paul. The next question is from Karen. Are you aware of any good books or other publications about birding in Greater Zion?
That's a good question. I personally don't know anything specific to Greater Zion. I'm sure there is some out there. We do have books that are specific to Utah that highlight a lot of the areas we talked about in Greater Zion. I don't have that book with me, but I don't know anything specific just to Greater Zion. Sorry.
Paul, we have a question. You had mentioned quite a few really great tours that you're planning on doing this next spring. Are there going to be any BirdFest tours focused on photography?
Yes, we had one. In fact, the keynote speaker, Kate Davis, for our 2020 BirdFest, we just said you couldn't come this year. You're going to come next year. She's actually a photographer, and we have several amazing photographers in the county. And we had set up several tours specifically for bird photography, including one with Kate Davis. Again, she's out of Montana, but an amazing photographer. So yeah, we will have photography tours.
All right, Paul, this next question comes from Mabel. Do you need four-wheel drive to access Kolob Terrace Road?
Nope, it's paved all the way up. Now there is Lava Point. As you get up to the top of Kolob Terrace Road, that picture that I showed overlooking Zion National Park, that is called Lava Point, and it is a gravel road. It's easy accessible with a car. Winter, no, they shut down that road in the winter due to snow, and then after they open it up, you probably need four-wheel drive for several weeks while the snow melts.
And I think it is technically the top of the hour, but let's go ahead. How about Max, you and I each ask 2 more questions, and then we'll let poor Paul get his voice back.
Thank you. I apologize.
So the next question is asking, when is the best time of the year to see hummingbirds?
Summer. In the winter, we really have, the Anna's hummingbird is our most common, but in the summer, that's when we get most of our hummingbirds coming through, the costas, the black chin, the broad-tailed. That's the best time to see hummingbirds.
Thanks, Paul. This question's from Shauna. In one of your photos of the California condor, there was a flap on its wing. Do you know what that is?
Yes. In fact, every condor has one of those flaps, and it's the big number. And not only that, I don't know if all of them do. This is a great question for the Peregrine Fund tour when you're going out to the Vermilion Cliffs, but they have transmitters also, so they can track these, the condors. And so when they're soaring, you can get out your binoculars and read the numbers. So it's just identification. And the reason why they do this is there's, I think, only about 400 total birds in the wild right now. They're so endangered that they need to monitor each one. The greatest threat to these birds is lead poisoning. When hunters go out and hunt and then they field dress their kill, the condors come down and eat that field dressing. Well, inside that is typically a lead bullet. And so the Peregrine Fund, as I understand it, tracks these birds, and on I don't know how regular, yearly, every other year, they will capture the birds and take blood samples. And if they find evidences of lead poisoning early enough, they can save the birds. And so it's simply just tracking numbers for the birds.
Great, thank you. So this is my last question that I'll be pulling out of the chat box. Max has one more after me. Are there any interesting success stories related to the Mexican spotted owl?
That's a good question. I will tell you, when I went hiking up to Zion, in fact, we took those pictures of the spotted owl, not the first one, but the ones, in fact, that was me and my father-in-law in that canyon. There were signs at the beginning of the canyon that said, sensitive area, don't talk, be quiet, please. There was a nesting area. And I would say 95% of the hikers forgot that sign, 10 feet after they passed it. But as far as I know, I don't know of any specific programs. I guess the advantage that they have is that they like to nest, and their habitat is steep and rugged canyons. So they're for the most part difficult to access. The one picture that we showed, that is the one, that's an exception. It happened to be on a very busy trail, but not that I'm aware of. I know that'd be a good question for the Zion biologists, the biologists at Zion National Park.
All right, Paul, last question for me. And well, this one's from Linda. Can you tell us more about the petroglyphs in the presentation, such as how old they are and who made them?
Whew. How old they are, I don't know. The ones I was showing in the presentation were the Anasazi. In fact, along that picture I showed you, the Tukapetsi Trail, if you follow that trail long enough, you'll actually arrive at an old Anasazi village, a village site. But there are actually petroglyphs all over the county. You know, right in my neighborhood, they don't advertise this, but right in my neighborhood, some people pointed out right up on this hillside, yeah, you can go up here and see petroglyphs. So I'm not, that's a good question. We're working with, it's called the Dixie Archaeological Society. It's a big organization down here that helps people, you know, teach and learn about the petroglyphs and the artifacts in our area. We're partnering with them on this tour. So you would have somebody from the Archaeological Society along on the tour that can help point out those petroglyphs and give you more information.